Cannabis, Cultivators, and Breeders Forum. I'd like to welcome them up to the stage right now. So get your photos, make sure you flag these folks down and say what's up and introduce yourself. Wow. Great.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, guys. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the event.
Yeah. Thank you. That was great. Appreciate you. I'll just hand those over. All right. Yeah. Huge shout out, Lizzie Jeff. I'm a big fan of all of her community. And yeah, Oakland High Face. Shout out Reggie Harris. We need you here next year. You know what I'm saying? What's up, Lizzie? How's it going? Thank you. Thank you for being here. Yeah. All right. It's a pleasure to be able to share the stage with such amazing folks. I've been getting a lot of that this weekend. So in the interest of staying on schedule, respecting your time, respecting the other panelists' time, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the next one. This is the Cannabis, Cultivators, and Breeders Forum. So give them a hand. Let's get rocking and rolling with this. All right. Oh, of course, they all want to talk to the panelists. I get it. Popular people, you know? All right. Are you on this next one? Y'all want to come up? All right. Great. Oh. Okay. Okay. Run a show. I was told tap dance for 15 seconds. I changed my footwear. These felt like very Florida appropriate, you know? I'm a West Coaster. I don't know. I got these shoes in Jordan over in the Middle East. I went on a river canyon tour, and they gave me these included with like the $3 price of admission to the canyon, and they're actually like my favorite footwear now. Isn't that some shit? How you can like drop a bunch of racks on nice shoes, or you can get some plastic Crocs or knockoff Crocs, and then they end up being your favorite shoes. Fantastic. Yeah, got a lot going on here. Okay. Also, while it's on my mind, let's give it out. Let's give it up for the AV team. The audiovisual team has just been crushing it. So we appreciate your work, gentlemen. They're doing a lot of work behind the scenes up here, making sure that everything runs smoothly. So big love. All right. And a lot of heavy hitters on this next panel as well. So y'all ready to rock and roll? I'm ready to get out of here. Okay, I'm going to pass this off to Rochelle, I believe, and let's get going. So again, that's Cannabis Breeders Forum coming up.
Let's go. Let's go. Who we're missing? We're missing one person.
What up, everybody? Mike said hi.
We lost one of our panelists, so in the mix. So we're gonna give them a second. Welcome to the Cultivator and Breeders Forum, though. Thanks for sticking around. We'll get going in just a second.
No.
Fashionably late. All right, cool. All right, let's get into it. My name is Rochelle Gordon. I'm a cannabis and psychedelic journalist and writer, and I'm super honored to be moderating this heavyweight panel. We've got a lot of intelligent folks up here with a lot of amazing experience. So I just want to kick it right off, and we're going to go down the line. I'm going to let everybody take some time to introduce themselves and give a little bit of their background, and then start jumping into some questions. So please.
All right. Is this on? Okay. My name is Jay Michaels. And I've been in cannabis for 50 years, since 1972. I am COO of NorCal Seeds and Genetics, which is located in Southern California right now. And we've been collecting seeds, and we have the largest collection of cannabis genetics in the world, and we've been breeding cannabis now for last like 35 years.
All right. Good morning or good afternoon. My name is JJ Michaels, and I am the CEO of NorCal Seeds and Genetics. I've been working with my husband for the last 26 years in the cannabis industry. And I'm here to talk about cultivation and breeding and whatever questions you have. And I'm very honored to be here with you and all of you as well. Thank you.
How's it going, guys? My name's AK. I'm the VP of Cultivation for TRP Co. We're the guys that have the license here in Florida for cookies. Been cultivating for quite a long time. A construction background, so from build, design, operation, the whole 9 yards. That's kind of my specialty. So stoked to be here. Excited to be on this panel with these guys.
Hi, my name is Manny with Freedom Town Holdings, co-founder and founder of Bermuda Triangle Seed Co. Also with my partner here, Joe. Been growing cannabis for close to over, I'd say around 25 years. So it's been a hell of a ride.
How y'all doing? My name is Jose, co-founder of Freedom Town Holdings. Been cultivating cannabis for about 30 years. I love it. Don't really ever want to do anything else except grow plants. Also co-founder of La Marina Boys. We're out of New York City, developing a brand for that market as well. That's what I do.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being here, you guys. This is great. I want to start off, and please make sure to start formulating your questions because there's going to be a heavy Q&A component. Tap into these heavy hitters right here. I wanted to start, though, talk a little bit about breeding. We've seen incredible advances, especially over the last decade or two, and it's been really, really impressive. And the only thing that piques my interest, though, is the fact that everyone's kind of looking for the hot new thing, but at the same time, we don't really get a chance to have those stable genetics. Some things have stuck around, certain strains and cultivars, but I'm wondering, how do you balance out in an age of hype weed some of those classic genetics and stabilization? Do you want to start, Jay?
So when we stabilize genetics, one of the first steps is going to be crossing. That'll give you your hybrid vigor, and the plant is, at that point in time, is going to use all its energy to make the flower. And that's really what most people want to cultivate. They want to get the flower. Nobody's growing stems and leaves off of it. The second step in that stabilization would either be to backcross or to inbreed it, depending what traits you don't see in the cultivars that you have seeded out and grown. So you would take that cultivar and backcross it, and what will happen to that at that point in time is it will stop trying to produce the flowers and start concentrating on stabilizing itself. Stabilizing, growing better roots, growing better stems, more leaves, less leaves, spreading out its flowers, whatever it might do. And over maybe a period of about 3 years, it used to take this at least, about 3.5 years, you can stabilize a strain after about 7 to 8 generations of backcrossing, inbreeding it, crossing it back, and getting exactly what you want out of those traits. There's different tricks. Pollen, usually the male pollen will give you more characteristics to the flower, and the females will have more of the characteristics of a stabilized, big, giant plant, like all your structural parts and components of the plant, such as the stems and the roots and that. Now, what's going on right now is really cool, because what used to take us 3.5 years now, it could be done in about 1.5 years. And that's done through marker-assisted breeding, or MAB, or marker-assisted selection, which is MAS. That's done by taking a sample of your plant and getting a DNA and RNA sequencing done, and they will try and put points on it, little marker points on what those traits are that are the best in your cannabis. And how that helps is when you grow out something, you find something that you really like and it's really good, then you can take a sample of that plant and send it to the lab, get that analysis, and then every time you get seeds or anything, you could grow 100 seeds, you'll take a little sample of that plant, send it back to the same lab, and it will tell you exactly if that plant's going to turn out like the plant that you had and the one that you want. So instead of having to take it all the way through the flowering period, which takes so much time and effort because you have to keep the mother plant or the flowering plant alive along with another copy or some kind of tissue culture or maybe a clone or something like that alive for another 8 months. Now you could do it almost within weeks. You could find out exactly what you want, and this is very accessible to everybody. After that, I'm sure that the new stuff that's coming on in the future to even help us even more will be AI breeding assistance.
Anybody else want to touch on the breeding or move it along?
Yeah, I think the genetic markers, using genetic markers, and how the advances in breeding have, you know, advanced so much, and like Jake touched on it, it's really reduced the time, overall turnaround time on the breeding aspect of it, because, you know, maybe when Jay started breeding or I started breeding, or, I mean, I haven't been breeding for as long as he is, obviously, but obviously it's more, it used to be more of an art form, more of a craft. Now it's just based upon science. And so you're taking something that someone used to, you know, dedicate 3.5 years, 4 years, 5 years, 7 years to really fine tune and tone. Now you got advances that you're getting it done in 1.5 years. You know, you're going by these genetic markers that's, you know, accelerating the entire process. It's not to say that you're not going to have someone out there that's still using the old methods, the art form, to create something that's going to really take off in the long run, or in the short term. But, you know, a lot of these new breeders that are coming out are not even using anywhere near any of this science. So they're just chucking pollen, throwing things together, and hoping to have a hit. That works as well. But the wave of the future is definitely going with you know, the genetic markers, and really using like the AI and the science-backed platform that's being built as a whole. You know, it's taken off to another level.
For sure. I think you hit the nail on the head with the pollen chucking thing. I would say that's something you really got to watch out for these days, like what he just finished explaining and what he's talking about, spending that time, 3 to 5 years, to really dial in and figure out what your cut is and do all this stuff. Like, unfortunately, that just doesn't happen. Most of the breeders in the past, when I first started 20 years ago, they went through that process. So you would know, because their genetics got tested and grown out before it got put in a bag and sold to you just on a hype name, that, okay, cool, this is actually going to be legit. It might be stable. You got a good chance of getting something good. So now when you're buying genetics, you got to be really careful and understand how much work those breeders actually put into it. Did they really breed it? Are they seed makers? Are they an actual breeder? And sometimes that can be hard to decipher. And I think really, like, if they haven't put the time in it, we're talking about 21st century technology, and it still takes 1.5 years to do this. So if you see someone that, like, you know, if a cut just came out 6 months ago and 9 months later there's seeds of it, you got to expect a whole lot of variety and a whole lot of instability in that. That's definitely something as far as stability goes. I think that's probably the biggest contributing factor to the instability of the genetics that are on the market right now.
And I just want to add another thing. If you're thinking on breeding cannabis and wanting to do this, or even planting a seed and seeing how it grows, keep records of it, okay? Say where you got it. Even if you bought it from another company and you feel uncomfortable, put the name of it on, put the date on, and tell where you got that genetic, because that's what's going to make it valuable. It sounds counterintuitive to do that kind of a thing, but it's really important, because you're going to need to have a pedigree with your genetic, and you're going to have provenance. You're going to want to know where all that came from, that genetic, so it could be traced back. Without that, it's like having a dog that doesn't have a pedigree or papers for it. It's just a mutt, you know? And especially with everybody killing all the genetics these days and rebreeding it and crossbreeding it with everything, you don't know what you have. So even getting a genetic in the first place is going to be a little difficult. It's not 20 years ago. You're not going to go to Africa and find something that someone else hasn't found. In fact, you'll find out when you do go to these countries that they basically have what we have now, because everybody wanted the best, the sugariest stuff and that. And now we're finding out that, you know, and not that I didn't know that before, because I love weed and I smoke it all the time, that the terpenes are the most important thing in it. And so that's the smell and the colors that you get out of the cannabis that are getting you high. It's not the THC content. So a lot of that's been bred out. So now we need a bunch of people to come back in and start really rethinking breeding and coming back to what we used to have, bring those old cultivars back. They can be brought back from genetics that we have now. It's just going to take some time and some interested people that are into doing it. And if you've never bred or grown cannabis before, you need to do it, because it's really cool. It'll get you into growing all different kinds of other things and give you an understanding of basically how plants grow and how nature provides those plants to us.
Well, I know, kind of going off that point, the traveling of the genetics, and it's something that AK and I were talking about earlier. It's like you can have a plant that'll do amazing in the Emerald Triangle, and it might perform far different in Florida. A lot of that has to do with the inputs, the environment. So how does one reconcile that? How do you cultivate genetics that may have originated elsewhere and do it in a way where you could potentially mimic the outcome? And on a second point, how do people know what genetics to grow, when they're looking for something either in their garden or they're starting commercially? How do you pick the genetics, especially when it comes to your environment?
I think most of all, a lot of people have a misconception that growing, grabbing some kind of variety out of California is going to test well in Massachusetts, or it's going to test well in New York, or it's going to test well in Florida. That's somewhat almost never the case, because you're dealing with different altitudes, you're dealing with dry environments in the desert, and you bring it somewhere here like Florida. If that genetic is not stable, you're going to have to try and somewhat mimic, and that's hard to do when you're living in a swamp, to get that performance out of that plant at the end of the day, because you're pulling something out of the fucking desert and then you're bringing it to a swamp. It's not going to perform how you think it's going to perform, especially with things like PM. You got a way different environment here that you're always fighting, as opposed to maybe a calmer, cooler, drier environment or hot in California, or the desert, and you bring it out here, it's a totally different aspect. And you might get a 30% in California, or 35, 40%, and then you bring it out here, even though the testing is all over the place, all over the country. You bring it out here, it's not going to perform the same. It might completely tank and hit a 14, and you're like, wow, what happened? I have COAs, and it doesn't perform the same. You've dealt with that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think, I guess the best way for me to explain my position on that would be, from my experience, like, I got a background in construction, so I grew up building grow rooms. My dad's a contractor. I learned how to build everything from him growing up. So the biggest difference I've noticed in Florida compared to California, or, an Arizona or Colorado situation, the obvious elephant in the room is humidity. Humidity and heat. So for us, we build our rooms in Florida a little bit different than we build them in LA. And the whole idea is to basically give yourself, you got to mimic as many things as you can from wherever you brought that cut from, and try and make it the same, including all the way to your outside environment. So for example, in Florida, it's the only place in my life where I have ACs and dehumidifiers in my attic space, not only just my room. So I'm using HVAC to control my outer envelope, and then inside the rooms, again, to control my inner envelope. So for me, that's the best way that I've found to where you can find like the best baseline and the best happy medium to try and get the same results.
That's $1 million worth of game.
So, and it's honestly, it all boils down to knowing your environment. Like sometimes you're going to be in if you're in a greenhouse in southern Florida and all you got is fans and some curtains, you're probably going to go into the high triple digits, and you're going to be different stuff. So you got to make sure in that situation, you're either adding more moisture to it if there isn't enough there to get your VPD where you want it. It's all about your environment. The genetics and everything else will express themselves correctly as long as their environment is, you have to have a baseline for that environment.
And we've always, and AK, just add a point to that. We've lived in California for the last 18 years, and you could be on the coast of California, and that's another thing that you obviously need to take in consideration with the additional moisture. And so having a very controlled environment with the same cultivar, whether it's in California, Florida, wherever, is a super big deal.
So what I think that has really helped us progress in indoor cannabis is learning about VPD and being able to track that data. So when we see something represent really well, we can put it in a room with other genetics that experience the same results. And now we start to build mini ecosystems where we control the humidity and our temperature set points and our lighting. So my guy's out here in the back somewhere, because we take all the credit up here, but it's not us. It's back there.
Nelson and Grant.
Definitely a
Black
team
Work
game.
Grower. That's right, Black Work Grower OG. And
Give
we
it
got
up.
the
Anthony
frame
Grant.
brandness. So, behind us, we have a young team that understands, that supports, and together we've been able to create what we have. But it's definitely nowadays a team, an effort, understanding, trusting in one another's abilities, and that's what we've learned. So VPD has really helped us. Crop steering has really helped us in being able to understand what the plant likes more, instead of just back in the days running a certain set point of humidity and temperature and feeding it multiple times a day. With the technology now that we can track, that's what gives us the ability to give you the flower you're seeing today.
To touch on what Joe's saying, if you asked me 20 years ago, 25 years ago, that I would be plugging a computer into a plant, I would probably have believed it because I watched the Jetsons when I was a kid. But yeah, it's mind-blowing to the amount of data you can collect, and that's what cannabis and growing in general, agriculture has become. Data logging is the most significant factor in cannabis right now. Anyone, people that have been growing for years have an eye for it. They walk into a room, they can sense exactly what's going on in that room based on smells, feel, anything. You can walk into a room and you immediately know that there's something wrong without even looking at a computer. But the most important aspect of scalability is probably being able to track your information, your data, because you can look back a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, whatever, on certain trends and see where maybe certain failures happen, certain successes happen. But that's really what sets everything apart, especially down here in Florida with compliance issues and things of that nature. If you're not tracking your data and what do you call it, information points, or where you would, if there was a certain kind of failure, you can go backtrack and look, 3 months ago, we had a mechanical failure with an HVAC or whatever the case may be, and you could see that trend and loss of product, or whatever the case may be. So to touch on Joe's point, it changes everything. Data logging is the game changer.
You guys could always grow seeds outside and just start from scratch.
gonna say,
Start taking
exactly.
in
Just
everything
plant the seed.
Florida, bro.
And you'll learn right off the bat.
you get to
what
try every
grows,
90
what
days.
doesn't,
Down.
how it performs, and you'll get better and better at it. And those will be yours, and that's your information. And you'll be developing your own cultivar. And eventually you'll be able to take that, maybe if it's really good and other people like it, and turn it into a brand that only you have and not anybody else. In Florida, you have a more of a vertical kind of system. So everybody that grows here has to sell it through their own dispensary now. In California, you don't have to do that. You can almost take any part of that industry and use it to sell your product to any dispensary or anyone that's out there that wants your product. And what happened in California is that all our genetics kind of disappeared and died, and now we only have like maybe 20 different kinds of cannabis out there, and everybody has it, and it's just been a race to the bottom because now everybody's growing the same stuff. There's nothing different out there, and it's just who can grow it better and who can sell it cheaper, and nobody wants that. So I try to encourage everybody to get as many seeds as you can, throw them in the ground, see what they turn up to be, keep your pollen, store your seeds correctly in a nice dry place, don't put them in the freezer or anything, and continue breeding and take records on that. You might come up with one of the best strains that we've ever heard of, that's never existed before, with cool terpenes and tastes and flavors and a high that everybody really, really likes. So it's important. And you don't know what you have, so keep every seed, keep track of it, and try and keep records as good as possible. Because like we were all talking about, having records is the most important thing now for the value of your cannabis cultivar.
I think there's kind of like a couple different conversations happening here, right? Because it's like also, what are you growing for, right? Are you growing for a large commercial yield? Are you growing for extract? Are you growing for personal? Are you trying to develop your own genetics? Every person's goal is different. And I think that's something that people really need to take into account before they move forward. What are you actually trying to achieve here? So.
Yeah, and that really matters. So when you are choosing a cultivar and you are going to make a concentrate, there are specific cultivars that we would suggest that you cultivate for that particular product. And keep in mind, 20, 30 years ago, keeping data was, not something you wanted to really do. So, and we didn't start working with scientists until, just a number of years ago. So a lot of this started with intuition. What smells good for me is probably good for me. And what I like and so there are a lot of things intertwining, but I think we all sit here and absolutely love cannabis. And
These guys out here have already taken their craft to the highest point. Now they're trying to take it a little bit higher. They're some of the best growers in Florida right here. They've been growing all over the place in other states, so they know how to move cultivars around, and they really know what they're doing. So if you have any kind of questions about cultivation, or you want to up your game a little bit, these guys are the people that you want to ask.
and building your brand. And how do you build your brand? With really good genetics, and then knowing what you're doing, and having the quality and the consistency, and continue to do that over and over and over. And so when you go into that store, you know exactly what you're going to get all the time, because that medicine works for you, and you want to go get it again, and you can get it there with them.
So, and being up here and listening to everybody, something that's also happened is now as growers, we communicate. So we don't hide anymore. So we're able to communicate, we're able to share secrets. There may be a strain that I don't know too well, but I know that I can go to somebody that grows it really well and be like, hey man, like, what am I doing wrong here? Feet too wet, too much water, my EC too high, a number of things we can go through. But another subject I want to touch on is also that it's all community, right? Because that's what makes us great. And here we got a tremendous support system here at Extreme Farming. So our guys right here, and I even go to them. We run into something that we don't know, call Andrew. Be like, Andrew, have you seen this? Any other growers in the area have experienced this and whatever. So I guess the data has really worked good, but having community is what I think has given us the ability to raise our bar. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really great to see this information be disseminated. It used to be back in the days like, okay, get one of Ed's books, and then it was the internet forums, and now you can literally call someone, and we're out in the open, and we're sharing. There's not that gatekeeping going on, which is really, really great. And speaking of that, I would really like to open it up. We have such immense knowledge up on the stage here. If anybody has questions for anybody here, yes, right there. Opinions on mixed light.
Yeah, I'm all about it. Being that I grew out in Washington State for a couple of years, and we did a light depth greenhouse with mixed lighting, and coming from an indoor environment my whole life, definitely seeing how mixed lighting and nature, even the moonlight, I feel plays a role in how cannabis expresses outdoor, which is something that we haven't gotten to indoors. So there's still a lot to go to kind of align the two, but I don't think anything will ever be as close as sunlight or mixed lighting, in my opinion.
I just want to add something too that, remember you're in Florida, so you're going to have a lot of cloud cover. That can trigger early flowering in your plants. So having that mixed light, and what they're talking about is a mix of sunlight and a supplemental light for that plant to continue in its vegetative stage.
I think mixed light's the future of cannabis, to be honest with you. I personally, my joke about it is I call them cheaters. I think it's an indoor room with a sunroof, and I think that's great. But when, as we watch this plant become more and more of a commodity, just like cars or booze or anything else that we have in our country, in the world, I think that's the only way it really makes sense to start doing quality at scale. Cost-wise, economics-wise, it's unbeatable. If you put 1,000 lights up in a greenhouse versus a 1,000-light indoor facility, it's going to be an exponential difference in cost. Don't get me wrong, you can put all the bells and whistles in a greenhouse, but if you get something where you have your basic environmental control in a greenhouse, your depth curtains, and your lights, you're going to crush compared to the most basic 1,000-light indoor that you would set up for a lot cheaper. And I think there's also a lot to it with, we've been hiding, like he said. So along with that community and everything else, we couldn't go blow out a big greenhouse out there and see what's up. We're stuck in a basement. I know that's how I started, So I think that also plays a big factor in it all the way through, like from testing, the equipment, the exposure in general. But I think overall, in a nutshell, mixed light's going to be the future. There's a lot of guys in SoCal, NorCal, High Desert, really all over the world that are putting out, weed that matches the indoor. So yeah, again, I think that's definitely the future of cannabis, in my opinion.
We've grown cannabis all over the country, and I'll tell you from experience, and Joe can also chime in on it. It expresses differently everywhere, and we've used mixed lighting. We've used the power of the sun, obviously, and it always expresses differently. Obviously, the environment has a lot to do with it, but you're never going to get a plant to fully express itself indoors unless you have an absolutely perfect environment, and even with that, you're still not going to get it. Like AK was saying, these hybrid indoor facilities that are happening now where you have a glass roof and hard walls, it's really changing the game because you're getting that plant to fully express itself. You're getting that plant to create the maximum amount of terpenes, flavonoids, really hit those numbers if you got a dialed-in environment. So that the light is critical, especially from the sun, and being able to harness that indoors is really where it's going, because it's a much more efficient manner of growing, even though it does still cost a few $1 million to build.
And absolutely, I just want to add to that. I love growing organic cannabis outside in Northern California, and just having the opportunity to grow the same cultivar inside, mixed light, outdoor, and having the full expression of that cultivar, coming to the end. Super, super tastier. Terpenes the percentages are a little higher normally outdoors, and so I suppose it's just what you're used to or what you prefer. I love growing outside in the sun.
More questions? Yes, right over here. Is there any technology that we can deploy for dormant seeds to get them to pop?
Okay, yeah. So an average seed from almost any cannabis plant will at least stay viable for 8 years. After 8 years, they start to desiccate, and that means dry up, and they don't have the ability to come out of and form a plant. So there's a lot of things that you can do. There's little tricks that you can hear of scoring, or you put them in a freezer for a while and see if that helps, but usually that won't. So what we've been working on is finding nutrient mediums and hormones to make the seed form a root, and from there we add new hormones to it to make it form a stem and leaves and continue on. And that's all done in basically in agar and different cultures. There's sugar, scrug, I think, is one of the nutrients that we use for that. However, you should keep breeding your cannabis plants at least once every 4 years to make sure that you replenish your seeds and keep them that way. Or otherwise, they just die and they won't come up. And if you're looking at commercial seeds and how agriculture views this, they usually do it with 100 seeds. They'll take the number that come up, and that is your germination rate. So for commercial seeds, you need at least a 97% germination rate. So that means 97 of those plants will come up. The other part about that is vigor. They will time how long it takes to get those seeds to pop up. That'll kind of give you an idea of how old those seeds are. So if it takes it 5-6 days to finally form a seed and pop up, then you know it's an older seed. Because normal seeds that just pop off a plant that are younger than a year old will pop up within about 3 days.
Yes, right here.
situation.
Some of them might be toxic. So I'm curious about, like, do we have to look out for this? Like, is it a concern if our young people or anybody is getting cannabis from different sources that it might not be just any more little, and it could be like a fine art. I'm not judging like cultivation. I know human genius can create something. Okay, so I hope from what I just shared that there's a question there that you can help me understand. Do we need to be aware of, is there some dangerous possibly in some of the modern cannabis?
There's no fentanyl in your cannabis.
Thank you. Thank you. I think what you were trying to get at was there was a few things in your thought there. You were talking about respecting the sanctity of this plant and the culture of this plant and what it was before and what it is and why it's on earth with the commoditization of it, right? And what we're creating and how can we respect what came before us but honor what's happening now, right? I don't think that, I mean, I feel like, and I think we were talking about this last night at dinner, that this has not always been a clean process, you know? Like, you guys were spraying some crazy stuff back in the day.
Yeah, no, look, I think the simple answer to your question is anytime you're ingesting anything, you should probably be aware about it and you should be concerned about what you're ingesting. I don't usually smoke a whole lot of weed from people that I don't know that grow it. More so now than in the past, whether it be pesticides or PGRs like Paclo or phospholode, stuff like that. Those are the chemicals you're talking about that will make the flowers bigger. Those are the guys, like, for me personally, like, making money off growing weed has been, it's a secondary thing for me. It was originally for me, is like I fell in love with this plant. I want to keep growing it. I'm interested in it. I want to chase this. It's not like, I didn't get into this to be cool or to make money specifically. I did it because I love the plant. And I think along those sides, like, we have a lot of crazy technology. He's telling you, we're putting computers in the side of our plants now. It's a lot different. But yeah, in general, like, you got to be careful if you're getting anything from anybody. Depending on where you're getting it, know your source, know who's growing your weed, know who's extracting your extracts. All of those things that you're talking about, a lot of these guys have figured out how to trick these tests, at least when it comes to the flower itself. But the thing is like, when it comes to on the extract side, like, one of our sayings is that the tube doesn't lie. Like, that tube's going to concentrate anything that's been sprayed or used to grow that plant. It's going to concentrate in there right along with the cannabinoids and everything else, and you're going to get it. So in that sense, on black market weed, yeah, if your weed's so hard that you can throw it at the wall and put a dent in the wall, like, I probably wouldn't smoke it, If you smoke it and you notice, like, your jaw's starting to lock up, then they probably sprayed it with some Avid or some other nasty pesticide that you don't want to be smoking. That being said, like, I'm sure almost everyone in this room, if not every single person, has at least smoked weed or smokes weed on a regular basis. A lot of us are old enough to have been around when it wasn't legal, and we're all still alive, and we still eat the food that comes out of our basic food processing in our country. So, like, do I think it's going to kill you? No. Do I think you should be aware of it? Absolutely. I think you should be aware of everything and anything that you're going to ingest. But, you know.
And then where is it coming from? I mean, California is heavily regulated. We go through a number of testing, and then who's growing it? Is it people that really, really love cannabis?
Are they smoking it too?
Yeah,
like,
where's your
I'm
source?
smoking everything I'm growing, so,
Us too.
Yeah. So, not too long ago, there was a podcast, and it spoke about this same thing, about cannabis in Florida particularly. I guess you just got to follow people that show and brands that show integrity, because at the end of the day, a lot of companies are here for the bottom line. They're here to make $1, and if it doesn't show up on testing, then it's not harmful, I guess is the mindset. But, us that have made a living at this, and this plant's taking care of us our whole lives, we're not interested in being disrespectful like that. So I guess it goes back to what's said here. Know your grower. Don't follow the hype. Hype is cool, but legacy is forever, and that's why we're here.
And that's our business card. When you got good cannabis,
There's a big difference in people that are truly passionate about this, that have been doing it for a long time. Anybody that's using PGRs or anything to make a fast buck or to give it a certain appeal doesn't truly know what they're doing. Because with simple techniques that we've mastered over the years, you can make that plant pretty much do whatever you want it to do to a certain extent. You really have to get to know who you're buying from. Everybody knows somebody that's selling. If you're buying from a medical market, make sure that they're not a booth factory that's just turning and burning and trying to get $1 out of you. At the end of the day, passion shows, the truth shows. Someone that does it from their heart, it's going to resonate into the product. It's going to show. If, like AK was saying, if you could throw it and you could bounce it off the wall, it's probably got some PGRs in it. And here in Florida, we're highly regulated and tested, so there is no messing around unless you can mess around and get away with it, and that's not the case. It's very difficult at the end of the day, especially if you're growing outdoors in a greenhouse. That we have a lot of citrus farms in the area. They're using different products than we are. So it's something that we have to always manage and mitigate, the overspray from another farm or, in any case. But like AK was saying, the minute you extract that product, it's going to pop up. The minute you do a COA on the flower, even a 1.1, it's going to show up. And the minute you put it into extraction, it's going to multiply by 100.
So just to give an example on it, the other day we were on a call and talking about extraction numbers, right? And we lose like 88, 87% of our weight. So imagine the compounding effect that goes on when you extract. So extracts don't lie. If you don't start with clean flower, you don't get clean extracts. You could probably hide it in the flower, but once you go through extraction, the truth will tell. And I guess that's the biggest game changer now in cannabis, is that there is a tattletale. And a lot of people enjoy that product, which is extracts. And they don't lie. I've seen them fail before. I've seen a lot of stuff happen on flower that actually passed the COA. So that compounding effect is a big part of it. So if you have a store or a brand that you buy from or somebody that has flower and has extract of the same strain, and it's probably, telltale that it's safe.
Try and remember, too, that cannabis is a mitigating plant. Will take out every heavy metal in the environment through the air, through the soil, through the water, and it'll store it. So it's going to be breathing in all the carbon monoxide that's out there, or whatever pollutant or contaminant, drifting from chemicals, from some other source will get stuck in that cannabis plant, and it'll hold it in there. And it's good if you're taking radiation out of places, but if you want to get your plant tested, you don't want to have a high boron rating in your plant. It makes it, toxic.
We're running low on time. We can do one more question. I think you had one right up. What is a
Plant growth
PGR?
regulator.
Yeah, plant growth regulator, yeah. That's why your strawberries and your tomatoes are like, 10 times bigger than they were 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, we could probably do one more really, really quick. Yep.
Can you talk a little about how your genetics are determined if they're sativa-based, hybrid-based, or indica-based?
That's a myth.
I just want to hear from
He hit it on the head.
Indica,
guys how the industry is determining, you have a sativa field, a hybrid field, and an indica field.
who's deciding what's a sativa, indica, or hybrid? Real quick.
I think there's obviously, you sound like there's massive information there. I mean, misinformation there. He nailed it on the head. It's all myth. What it really boils down to is your terpene content, your flavonoid content, and how that symbiotic relationship, that entourage effect between that and whatever actual cannabinoids you have in there are going to affect you, right? So, for example, if you have something that's like super high in limonene or any of the like traditional, sativa strains, you might call them, right? So any of the hazes, any of these sours, like that's all based off that terpene profile. And if you have the opportunity to get some steam distilled terps and then just some raw distillate, the hot dog water, mix that terp with the hot dog water and smoke it separate from smoke it by itself and then mix one of those terps I'm talking about in with it, and you'll physically understand exactly what I just said.
It does have physical characteristics, though, that are different. There are
sure.
longer leaves. There are different node structure on it. It grows to be a larger plant. You're talking maybe anywhere from 12 pounds to 17 pounds can be pulled out of a plant like that. So those things are also what we use in breeding like, for instance, an indica grows much better in California than it grows here in Florida. But you can hybrid it with a sativa that will make the tops and the flowers, when they're done, thinner and smaller, so they don't have to push that much water when they're growing and getting rotted.
You have to think about it like the THC are the propellers and the terpenes are the rudder. So you're taking off and the rudders are steering. Which way it goes, you don't know, because as like the Cuban black haze, it'll get you up. You'll smoke it, super sativa. It'll get you up flying, but you smoke enough of it, you're going to land on the floor real fast. Your couch locked real fast. So how do you determine that? So it really has to do with that. And now a subject that we've been touching on a lot is the flavonoids. And now that we have the technology to really look into it in the science, that's something that people haven't touched on enough, and it's not being marketed yet. It's just science-backed, and once we start seeing that more in the product being displayed on the shelf, I think people are going to start getting away with this THC race that's going on now, and the indica, sativa, and all that. You're going to see a much more diverse profile going forward with these plants.
THC race. That's something I never heard. That's new. It makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
I think in the marketplace, though, production kind of shies away from sativas. We're sativa guys, grow strains and let them go up to 110 days. But that doesn't work in production cannabis. It's really hard to keep in a calendar, and most of these other strains are 65, 70 days. So unless you're passionate and understand why you're going an extra 35 days, 30 days, or whatever it is, it has to be pure passion, because it doesn't make sense production-wise.
Like Joe touched on, and like just what Joe said, I think the patients are missing out on a lot of genetics that we might hold dear to our heart. It doesn't have to be something specific, but there's a lot of things that go much further than 60, 65 days, 75 days, that people would definitely enjoy and get a medical benefit out of it if that's what you're there for, not just to get high, that people are not experiencing. We have a lot of friends overseas that are running outdoors in India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Spain, that they're letting them run forever, that and you're getting something that's out of this world that you're not seeing in a production dispensary type situation that I think people would benefit from, but it touches on a lot of subjects, I think.
For sure, not being able to run long cuts and stuff that tests low in THC. Look, if you brought me something that tested at 35% THC and had 1% terps, and you brought me something that tested at 12% THC and had 4% terps, I'm taking that 12% all day long. Because I smoke for flavor and effect and everything else, and that's what I'm looking for. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. All about the entourage. One thing before we go, I think that Manny and I need to introduce our beautiful wives. Melissa's my wife here filming us, and back there is Jenny by the camera. That's Manny's wife, and they're pretty cool because they let us do this, and they let us travel, and they let us be ourselves, and that's something that's very important as well in what we do, is having the freedom. Yeah, so thank you.
Constant chaos.
Yeah,
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yes.
You're welcome. 26
I
years.
see a bunch of
You're
breeders out
welcome.
there.
Because you know what? Without us, you might not be as happy or successful or fruitful. You're welcome.
So I just want to say thanks to everyone who came. I know there were a lot more questions that we didn't get to. I can speak for everybody on the panel that we're all very open and please, approach. Really quick, one down the line. If anybody wants to tap in with you, how do they contact or follow? Real quick.
Yeah, NorCalSeedsAndGenetics.com, and I do answer people. I talk on the phone. I love what I do. I love my community. I came all the way out here from California to support you guys here in Florida and do the best I can, bringing information, bringing my fun stuff, and brought some pot with me to smoke with everybody, and I've been doing that for the last 4 days. Had a great time.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to smoke pot afterwards, we'll be outside.
Yes.
My name's JJ Michaels again. I'm NorCal Jen on Instagram, NorCal Seeds and Genetics on Instagram, J at NorCal Seeds and Genetics, Jen at NorCal Seeds and Genetics. And, thanks again for having us, and that's where you can find me.
Yeah, again, my name's AK. You guys can find me on Instagram at smokers_LA. It's SMKRS_LA. That's my main page. You guys can also check out the Cookies Miami page. You guys can see what we got going on here in Florida.
Again, my name's Manny. You can reach me at Freedom Town Holdings, or, it's Freedom Town Holdings LLC, or Bermuda Triangle Seed Co.
Yeah, you can find me at Joe the Hard Way. Freedom Town Holdings is the brand, and we are available at Fluent dispensaries throughout Florida, 32 stores, I believe, and counting. Thank you for the support. Appreciate all of you sitting down and listening to us. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for coming out. And give it up for our